The Richest Man in Babylon is an anthology following the stories of several individuals on their rags to riches journeys during ancient times, and imparts timeless wisdom that is not only directly applicable in the present day, but is also seemingly lacking in today's education systems, leading people to fall into the same financial pitfalls and mistakes that so many others have fallen into for thousands of years. In this video, we'll do a summary of what those stories were, we'll cover the key lessons and takeaways from those stories, and I'll extrapolate to cover how I think those lessons can be directly applied to today's time. The setting for these stories is especially symbolic. Babylon in its early days was nothing but empty land and a river, and through the hard work and innovation of people, it evolved to become one of the wealthiest societies in history. This draws a direct parallel to the overarching theme and philosophy of the book, which is this: that wealth is not a fixed-size pie, where your gain is someone else's loss. The overall size of the wealth pie grows, as each individual within it generates more value and thereby wealth. The book suggests through these tales that so long as an individual possesses a will and desire to succeed, and so long as they follow the simple laws of building wealth, they too can succeed. As the king of Babylon told our first character Arkad, "It is my desire that Babylon be the wealthiest city in the world. Therefore, it must be a city of many wealthy men." Now, without further ado, let's dive in. 1. Set the right mindset. Avoid hubris and arrogance. It costs nothing to ask advice from a good friend, and Arkad was always that. In the very first chapter of the book, we're introduced to two friends talking with each other, Bansir, the chariot builder of Babylon, and Kabi, the musician. Both of them have spent their lives working very hard, but neither of them have had much financial success to show for it. They recalled how their childhood friend Arkad, who didn't seem to be any smarter or harder working than them, has somehow been able to find more success throughout the years, and was now rumored to be the richest man in Babylon. They then made the decision that would change their lives, to go to Arkad and to ask to learn from him and his successes. The lesson here is very similar to the old saying of, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. If you don't make peace with the fact that there is much left for you to learn, then no amount of wisdom or opportunity coming your way will help you, because you won't be open to receiving it. How many people in your life do you know that are so confident that their worldview is correct, and they feel like they're smarter than everyone else, and when pressed for why they don't have success or happiness in their lives, the blame is always on someone else. It's the fault of their parents, or the system, or the patriarchy, or the Democrats. A common theme throughout many of the stories in the book is this: life can be hard, very hard in fact, but you have two options. You can sit and complain about how hard it is each day, or you can be humble and open to learning new things and changing your mind. The latter option is the first step to making life a bit less hard. If you have not acquired more than a bare existence in the years since we were youths, it is because you either have failed to learn the laws that govern the building of wealth, or else you do not observe them. Avoid limiting beliefs. Arkad, spoke the king, "Is it true thou art the richest man in Babylon?" "So it is reported, your majesty, and no man disputes it." "How becamest thou so wealthy?" "By taking advantage of opportunities available to all citizens of our good city." "Thou hadst nothing to start with?" "Only a desire for wealth. Besides this, nothing." If you've lived a very difficult life, even through no fault of your own, it's easy to lose confidence and subsequently faith that your lot in life could ever improve. When baby elephants are born, they're tied to a tree with a rope as part of their training to not run away. Because they're so small and weak, they'll tug on the rope many times and try to escape, failing each time. Each failure, though, is another data point added to their subconscious that they cannot break free when tied to a rope. When they eventually become adults, and they're tied to a tree with that same rope, even though they're now so strong that they could snap the rope like a twig, they don't even try, because the belief that they will fail has been so strongly engraved into their belief system. This is a well-established and unfortunate psychological phenomenon called learned helplessness. We go into it in more detail in my summary of Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, where he discusses how a dominant lobster's brain will literally dissolve and regrow a new, more subservient brain after experiencing a significant failure. The point of this lesson is this: just like arrogance and hubris can lead to your downfall, so too can your limiting beliefs and lack of confidence in yourself. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that your life is hopeless, especially if you haven't had the best luck or success, and when you see others around you with what seems like significant starting advantages. But it's important to remember that all of us are human. We were all clueless kids once, and there's bound to be people alive this very day that are currently in a far worse position than you, who will find a way to be extremely successful. And when I realized all of this, I decided to myself that I would claim my share of the good things of life. I would not be one of those who stand afar off, enviously watching others enjoy. I would not be content to clothe myself in the cheapest raiment that looked respectable. I would not be satisfied with the lot of a poor man. On the contrary, I would make myself a guest at this banquet of good things. Pay no mind to the lucky. Would you call a fisherman lucky, who for years so studied the habits of the fish, that with each changing wind he could cast his nets about them? Opportunity is a haughty goddess, who wastes no time with those who are unprepared. How often do you hear somebody talking about someone else's successes, and they comment, "Oh, they're so lucky"? In reality, there can be one of two possible scenarios. Either one, truly that person did manage to become the recipient of purely a lucky encounter. And this is not something to be overly envious of, as oftentimes when unearned wealth arrives too quickly, it can disappear just as quickly, since the person who inherited it doesn't have the skills or experience to properly manage it. This holds true even today, where anywhere from 30 to 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within just a few years. If luck was the only means by which someone acquired success, that success will not stick around for long. The other possible scenario is that while it appears that someone is lucky, the reality is that there has been a lot of hard work and failure going on in private behind the scenes for years. As the example in the book describes, if a fisherman goes out and casts a net into the ocean and catches a ton of fish on their first try, from the outside looking in, it seems like they're lucky. But what you haven't seen is the years of study and practice and trial and error that has allowed them to acquire the skill of knowing when and where to cast the net in the first place. This is further backed up by the psychological phenomenon of survivor bias. People love to showcase and talk about their successes, but few people go out of their way to talk about their failures. And failures are great learning opportunities. Now, this is not to say that luck is not real or that luck never plays a part in success, because it does. If you talk to many successful entrepreneurs, a huge number of them will say that in addition to their hard work, luck and being in the right place at the right time or meeting the right person had a massive impact on their success. And according to the book, that's exactly how luck works. Luck is not something you should count on to try and win the lottery or a horse race bet. Luck favors those who work hard and who work smart and who put themselves out there, ready and prepared to act on an opportunity quickly when it does finally present itself. What reason have we to feel the good goddess would take that much interest in any man's bet upon a horse race? I look to find her, not at the gaming tables or the horse races where men lose more gold than they win, but in other places where the doings of men are more worthwhile and more worthy of reward. Be extremely disciplined, especially on the small things. If you've set a goal for yourself, and then you've crafted a plan for how you're going to achieve that goal, the best way to make sure that you succeed in following through with that plan is by building the habit of following through on your other plans. As the old saying goes, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And as ancient as this wisdom is, there is a treasure trove of studies and data backing up the validity of this claim. We go into more detail about how this works in my book summary of Atomic Habits by James Clear, but think about some of your New Year's resolutions in the past that you didn't follow through on. Maybe it was going to the gym 5 days a week, or getting certified in a certain area, or waking up at 6 a.m., or learning a new skill. There's no shortage of advice on social media saying, you just need to be more disciplined. You need to be willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears. But this advice is actually quite counterproductive and misleading. While using motivation to accomplish important tasks is fickle and unreliable, so too is trying to power through the pain with discipline. because while it may work once or twice, it will not reliably work most of the time. A far more effective strategy is to make it feel easy and effortless to do the important tasks. And a way to do that is by picking one or two small stepping stone tasks and doing those consistently. Once you do something consistently every single day for a month or two without fail, your mind and body will actually find it difficult to not do that task on a daily basis. Once you've unlocked the ability to do that small task effortlessly, you then stack on the next level of that mini task, and you repeat this until the entire, once difficult endeavor becomes something that feels as automatic as brushing your teeth in the morning. The science behind this is incredible, so if that's something you're interested in, I highly recommend checking out my other video on atomic habits. Should I say to myself, for 100 days as I walk across the bridge into the city, I will pick from the road a pebble and cast it into the stream? I would do it. If on the 7th day I passed by without remembering, I would not say to myself, tomorrow I will cast 2 pebbles which will do as well. Instead, I would retrace my steps and cast the pebble. 2. Seek wisdom. Hard work is not enough. Working smart is critical. A common trap that many of us fall into is that we work hard, truly hard, and we feel that just because we worked hard at something and we spent many hours on it, that good karma will eventually reward us. And when this inevitably does not pan out how we expect, we get bitter and resentful. That's why it's important to first acquire wisdom before spending too much effort. Otherwise, you could just be wasting your time and resources. For example, let's say that you notice your local jewel merchant's business is a massive success, so you decide that you too shall become a jewel merchant. You don't know much about the industry, but regardless, you spend your savings chartering a boat, you spend a month sailing across the seas to buy jewels, and you return to try and sell them in your village, only to find out that they're not even real jewels, but just worthless pieces of glass. Now you've lost months of your time, and you're worse off than where you started. Even Arkad, the richest man in Babylon, did not magically become wealthy by having genius epiphanies on his own. He sought out a mentor, Algamish the moneylender, and made a deal with him where he exchanged the services he could offer in return for mentorship. Only after receiving this ongoing mentorship over the course of years was Arkad able to completely transform the direction of his life. The importance of acquiring mentors can hardly be overstated, and it's a common theme across books guiding on how to improve your life. I believe Jordan Peterson articulated it best when he said, "You already know what you know, after all, and unless your life is perfect, what you know is not enough." Not all advice is created equal. At the start of Arkad's mentorship with Algamish, his first lesson was to save a portion of all of his earnings, so that he could eventually invest that money to work for him, rather than him always having to work for his money. So Arkad did this, and after a year of saving, he invested his money by entrusting it to Asmer, the brickmaker, who wanted to start a business venture by buying jewels overseas and selling them locally for a profit. As Asmer was a brickmaker and knew nothing of the jewel industry, this went as unsuccessfully as you would expect from the section above just a moment ago. Translating this to today's times, while you should avoid the arrogance and hubris of thinking you already know everything you need to know, you should also not take advice from those who are not already successful in the field you are trying to enter. Take investment advice from those who have years or decades of successful experience in that area, not your buddy who heard about this great new penny stock opportunity on Twitter. Take advice on what you should study in college from those who are able to utilize their degree to achieve great wealth and life satisfaction, not from your cousin who is going through a foreclosure and says that college is a scam formulated by the government to keep the population in perpetual debt. Take real estate investment advice from professionals who started with nothing and grew to a portfolio of 12 successful, cash-flowing properties that enabled him an early retirement, not from your uncle who insists that you buy a primary residence in all cash before you even start thinking about investing. And next time, if you would have advice about jewels, go to the jewel merchant. If you would know the truth about sheep, go to the herdsman. Advice is one thing that is freely given away, but watch that you take only what is worth having. Wisdom is worth more than gold. A bag heavy with gold, or a clay tablet carved with words of wisdom? If thou hadst thy choice, which wouldst thou choose? In the book, Arkad had a son named Nomasir. Even though it was customary at the time for the son to inherit his parents' wealth, Arkad did not believe this to be good. So he gave Nomasir two things: a bag of gold and a clay tablet containing wisdom for how to grow and manage wealth. And he told Nomasir that he has 10 years to make something of himself to prove that he is capable of taking over the estate. Nomasir ended up squandering all of the gold, and only then did he go back to the tablet and start learning from it. After heeding the wisdom of the tablet, he was eventually able to regain all of his lost wealth and then some, and offered his father several bags of gold for the tablet he was given, as a sign of respect that the wisdom was worth far more than the gold he initially received. This advice is twofold. Even if you lose all your gold, wisdom lives on in your mind permanently, and you can use it to eventually regain all that lost wealth. The other side of the coin is to not be stingy when it comes to good quality education. There is much wisdom that can and should be taken advantage of for free, such as books from the library and asking others for a quick call or a coffee chat. You would be surprised at how willing many people are to offer their knowledge and advice for free if you only ask for about 15 minutes of their time. That being said, it can also be wise to set aside a budget each year that can only be used for the sole purpose of gaining wisdom, whether that be classes, courses, or conferences, where you can get a fast and high-quality brain dump of wisdom that allows you to shortcut years or decades of having to learn those lessons firsthand on your own. Your time here is limited, and sometimes investing money in learning from the experiences of others can allow you to buy back time that would otherwise have been spent trying to learn those lessons on your own. Without wisdom, gold is quickly lost by those who have it. But with wisdom, gold can be secured by those who have it not. 3. Manage your finances wisely. Deride not what I say because of its simplicity. Truth is always simple. Set aside 10% of all your earnings for long-term savings and investments. While this can be a difficult ask for many, especially those living paycheck to paycheck, Arkad advises that this is the very first law of building wealth. In the present day, a great way to accomplish this is by using automatic paycheck deductions, so the money is sent somewhere else, like a 401k account or a separate bank account. If you never see the money land in your main checking account, it makes it much easier to avoid the temptation of spending it. The reason this step is so important is because it lays the groundwork for building a system where your money will eventually work for you, rather than the never-ending cycle of you working for your money. Which desirest thou most? Is it the gratification of thy desires of each day? A jewel, a bit of finery, better raiment, more food, things quickly gone and forgotten? Or is it substantial belongings, gold, land, herds, merchandise, income-bringing investments? The coins thou takest from thy purse bring the first. The coins thou leavest within it will bring the latter. Get your spending under control. When several dozen villagers came to Arkad to learn from his wisdom, he asked how many of them have pretty much no money saved up. All of them raised their hand, despite the fact that they all held different professions and earned different levels of income. You could have 3 different people living paycheck to paycheck, and learn that one of them earns $30,000 a year, one of them earns $50,000 a year, and one of them might even earn $100,000 a year. I will tell thee an unusual truth about men and sons of men. It is this, that what each of us calls our necessary expenses will always grow to equal our incomes unless we protest to the contrary. Compound interest will be your greatest employee. When Arkad first started learning from Alchemish, after saving 10% of his earnings the first year, he made the mistake of entrusting his investment capital to Asmer the brickmaker, which we already covered a few minutes back. But after saving 10% of his earnings again the second year, he made yet another mistake. While he invested his money wisely and made a nice return, he spent his investment earnings on food and clothing, when what he should have done is reinvest his earnings to achieve compound growth. You eat the children of your savings, then how do you expect them to work for you? And how can they have children that will also work for you? Let's say you have $100,000 and you put it in a high-yield savings account earning 5% interest, which is the going rate at the time of recording this video. At the end of the year, you'll earn about $5,000 in interest. However, if instead of spending that interest, you reinvest it back into your principal, next year you'll earn 5% of $105,000, which is $5,250. If you keep reinvesting your earnings like this and allow them to compound, in 20 years, that initial investment of $100,000 will become $265,000, and your annual 5% interest from that point on will earn you $13,200 per year. In 30 years, this grows to $21,600 in interest every year, and this is if you never added anything to that initial $100,000 investment. One of the best examples showcasing the unfathomable power of compound interest is in the old TV show called Futurama, where the main character Fry accidentally freezes himself in a cryogenic chamber and wakes up in 1,000 years. At the time of his freezing, he only had 93 cents in his bank account, and with a mere 2.25% interest rate on that savings account, it had grown to a whopping $4.3 billion. Granted, this did take 1,000 years, but surely you can start with more than 93 cents, and you probably don't need to aim for $4.3 billion as your goal. The point is, compound interest is one of the most powerful forces within the laws of numbers, and you would be wise to take advantage of it. Protecting your principal from risk is priority number one. When Rodin sought advice from Mathon, the gold lender, about whether he should invest his 50 gold into a particular venture, the first questions Mathon asked were targeted to figuring out the likelihood that Rodin could lose his principal investment. Questions like, does the person who will be using the investment money for his enterprise have a track record of success in that industry? Will Rodin be given collateral that he can repossess should the investment go south? As the answers to these questions were all no, Mathon advised that he not invest in this opportunity. There are few feelings more gut-wrenching than saving and investing diligently for decades, slowly but steadily and consistently accumulating a solid nest egg, and then losing everything on one poor investment decision. I like not idle gold, but even less I like too much risk. Hedge against the uncertain future. One of the chapters told the tale of Banzar, a warrior in charge of defending the walls of Babylon against a siege from an invading army. For weeks and weeks, the citizens heard the loud rumblings of battle, with battering rams trying to smash the gates and the invaders attempting to scale the walls. And for weeks and weeks, the frightened citizens would run to Banzar with extreme anxiety, asking what will happen to them. Each time, Banzar calmly told them to go back to their families and assure them that they will be fine, for the walls of Babylon are strong and built properly to defend them. Just as the walls of Babylon defended its citizens, so too must you build an impregnable fortress in your own life to defend against unexpected tragedies through the smart use of savings, a rainy day fund, insurance, and reliable investments. Babylon endured century after century because it was fully protected. It could not afford to be otherwise. Increase your earning potential. A common pitfall among those embarking on the journey to wealth is placing too much emphasis on trying to seek investments that can generate unrealistic rates of return instead of focusing first on improving their monthly income. There are two problems with this approach. The first is that it violates the law of prioritizing the protection of your principal. Investments that promise outlandish returns tend to be the riskiest of them all. The other problem can be illustrated with simple math. Let's say you have $1,000 to invest, and you found an opportunity that will reliably earn you 30% interest every single year, which, by the way, is fairly unrealistic and probably very risky in the real world. But for the sake of argument, let's say it earns you 30% every year for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, that $1,000 will have turned into $13,800, earning you a total profit of $12,800 after 10 whole years. But if instead of just $1,000, you had $250,000 to invest, and you sought a much more reasonable investment, like a stock market index fund such as the S&P 500, which tracks the largest 500 companies in the US and has historically returned a modest 8% per year. That $250,000 earning just 8% per year for 10 years would turn into $540,000, resulting in a total profit of $290,000. So rather than focusing on trying to find unrealistic investment opportunities, it can be far more effective to first focus on increasing the raw dollar amount you can earn each month from your actual profession, which would allow you to invest in less risky investments and also earn far more money from those investments. If you're a software engineer, become the best software engineer you can be. If you own a local business, find ways to better market your services. If your career path doesn't allow any upward trajectory, consider pivoting to a different career path. The more wisdom we have, the more we may earn. The man who seeks to learn more of his craft shall be richly rewarded. If he is an artisan, he may seek to learn the methods and tools of those most skillful in the same line. If he laboreth at the law or at healing, he may consult and exchange knowledge with others of his calling. If he be a merchant, he may continually seek better goods that can be purchased at lower prices. 4. Watch for bad habits. Procrastination is a hungry demon. If you let it grow, it will devour your opportunities. In the book, a farmer tells Arcad about his past experience, where a sheep herder came to sell a huge flock of sheep. It was the middle of the night, and the herder had to run back to his village as soon as possible because his wife was ill, so he offered to sell his flock at a huge discount. The farmer didn't want to do the transaction at night, so he waited until the morning. But in the morning, plenty of others came and saw the opportunity as well, and they ended up buying the flock for many times more than what the farmer could have bought them for had he just acted on the opportunity swiftly. Opportunities don't exist forever. Anyone who started a YouTube channel in 2010 had way less competition than someone who's starting in 2020. Anyone who was doing e-commerce back in 2016 or 2017 knows that those were the golden years where you could spend literally $5 on Facebook and Instagram ads and get tens of thousands of impressions and an insanely high conversion rate. This advice is truly timeless. In the present day, studies showing its effectiveness often refer to this as speed of implementation, while in your grandparents' time, it was probably referred to as you snooze, you lose. No man can arrive at a full measure of success until he hath completely crushed the spirit of procrastination within him. If not careful, newfound wealth can destroy your relationships. Mathon the gold lender tells Rodan a parable of an ox and a donkey who lived on a farm. They were good friends, and one day the ox complained to the donkey that he's so exhausted because he has to work so hard every day from dawn till dusk, and that the donkey is lucky because he just carries the master around from time to time and then has plenty of rest between trips. So the donkey tries to help by giving the ox some advice to pretend to be sick the next day so that he can get the day off. So the ox listened to the advice, but the result of this was that the farmer just hitched the plow to the donkey instead of the ox for the day. And the donkey became so exhausted and beat up and chafed that he became bitter and resentful that he had to do all of the ox's work for him, and they didn't speak to each other anymore after that. To relate this to the present, when someone manages to acquire great financial success, oftentimes old friends and distant family members start coming out of the woodwork. If you want to help them out of the goodness of your heart, you're welcome to do so, but be careful to do it in a way that doesn't just offload all of their problems onto you, because that won't end well for anybody. If you desire to help thy friend, do so in a way that will not bring thy friend's burdens upon thyself. Stay organized. The book tells the tale of Dabasir, who, through a combination of misfortune and poor decision-making, ended up with an overwhelming amount of debt and essentially had to flee the city and live in servitude for years. After finally reclaiming his freedom and escaping back to Babylon, he was able to get his life back on track by laying out a plan for how he will regain financial stability and repay all of his old debts. Here's how he did it. He got extremely organized. The first thing he did was list out all of his outstanding debts in an organized way. Then, he listed out all of his recurring expenses and set a budget for his monthly earnings. 70% of his take-home pay would go towards living expenses for his family and for a small amount of leisure. 20% would go towards steadily repaying his debts, and 10% would be his to keep and invest, as outlined earlier in the book. By strictly sticking to this budget, and by monitoring his expenses and where his money was going, he was able to pay off all of his debts within just 12 moons and regain the respect of his friends and townspeople. Don't go overboard. While much of this book focuses on guidelines for building wealth, it's always important to keep things in perspective and remember why you want that wealth in the first place. Completely sacrificing your 20s, 30s, and 40s so you can have money in your 60s is just asking for regret, because not everything in life can be bought with money. You don't want to be financially rich at 60 years old wishing you could spend the money to buy back the youth that you missed out on. There's actually data out there showing how some people live so frugally their entire lives that once they retire, the habit of frugality has become so deeply entrenched into their psyche that they feel anxiety any time they ever spend any of the money they've accumulated, so they can't even enjoy the wealth that they've built. I personally think that part of what can lead to this phenomenon is the habits we built in our school years, where many of us don't study for exams until the night before, and then we pull an all-nighter and we cram, and somehow we're able to succeed in getting a passing grade. Every time this happens, your subconscious records another data point that putting something off for the future is fine because you can just catch up later. The huge problem here is that this type of behavior does not fly in real life. You can't eat 20-cent top ramen and avoid going to the gym for decades, and then start eating healthy and exercising at 50 years old and expect your body to just forgive you for the decades of abuse. You can't lock yourself in your house to focus on your business or career for decades, and then expect to be able to meet close friends or romantic partners at 50 years old as easily as you could have in your 20s or 30s. Financial success is important, and it can definitely play a big role in improving the quality of your life, but it is still only one component of the many that are required for an enjoyable life. As with anything else, perspective and balance are absolutely key. Enjoy life while you are here. Do not overstrain or try to save too much. If 1/10 of all you earn is as much as you can comfortably keep, be content with this portion. Life is good, and life is rich with things worthwhile and things to enjoy. Although The Richest Man in Babylon was written by George Clason 100 years ago and was based on clay tablets inscribed thousands of years ago, it's fascinating how the principles of wealth building have remained mostly unchanged during such a vast period of time where almost nothing else has remained constant. Alright, if you enjoyed all this ancient wisdom and you want to save it for easy reference, I'd love to send you the mind map that you saw on the screen throughout the video completely for free. If you click the link in the description, I'll get it sent over to you right away. And if you already subscribe to my newsletter, this mind map should already be sitting in your inbox. If you're interested in seeing more videos like this, check out my book summary playlist where I summarize and analyze other great books. And if there's a particular book that you want me to review, please let me know down below in the comments, because that's where I get ideas on which videos to make next. Thank you again so much for watching. Good luck in your adventure, and I'll see you in the next one.